I remember that Tuesday morning like it was yesterday, even though 20 years have passed. I was 8 years old, sitting on the wooden steps of Grandpa's old barn, watching my parents scream at each other in the driveway. Their voices carried across the farm like thunder before a storm. "I'm done with this marriage, Robert," Mum's voice cracked as she threw her suitcase into her car. Dad stood there, arms crossed, his face red with anger. "Fine, take whatever you want, but don't expect me to make this easy." I clutched my stuffed rabbit closer, hoping they'd remember I was there, hoping one of them would turn around and say, "Come on, sweetheart, you're coming with me." But they were too lost in their rage, too consumed by their hatred for each other to notice their only child sitting just 50 feet away. Mum's car engine roared to life. She backed out fast, gravel spraying everywhere. Dad stormed to his truck, slamming the door so hard I thought the windows might break. Within minutes, both cars disappeared down the dirt road, leaving nothing but dust clouds and silence. I sat there for what felt like hours, convinced they'd come back. They had to come back. Parents don't just leave their children behind, do they? But as the sun climbed higher and the morning grew warmer, reality began to sink in. They were gone. Both of them. And I was alone. Grandpa found me there around noon, still clutching my rabbit, tears dried on my cheeks. He didn't say much, just put his weathered hand on my shoulder and led me inside for lunch. That's when my real life began. Grandpa's farmhouse was nothing like the suburban home I'd known. The floorboards creaked with every step, and the old radiator clanged through the night like a ghost in chains. But it was warm, and more importantly, it was safe. "Your parents will figure things out," Grandpa told me that first week, though his voice lacked conviction. "Sometimes adults need time to cool down." I nodded, wanting desperately to believe him. Every morning I'd run to the window, hoping to see Mom's blue sedan or Dad's red pickup coming up the drive. Every evening I'd fall asleep disappointed. Grandpa never made me feel like a burden. He taught me how to feed the chickens, how to collect eggs without getting pecked, and how to milk Bessie, his old dairy cow. His hands were gentle when he showed me how to hold the pitchfork, patient when I struggled to reach the hay bales. "Work keeps the mind busy," he'd say, watching me stumble through my chores. "And a busy mind doesn't have time for worry." But I did worry. I worried that my parents had forgotten about me entirely. I worried that I'd done something wrong to make them leave. Most of all, I worried that Grandpa would get tired of taking care of me and send me away too. The first month was the hardest. I'd wake up crying, calling for Mom. Grandpa would appear in my doorway with warm milk and honey, sitting on the edge of my bed until I fell back asleep. He never complained, never made me feel ashamed for missing them. Slowly, the farm began to feel like home. Weeks turned into months, and still no word from my parents. Grandpa made phone calls, left messages, even drove to their old addresses. But they'd both moved on, leaving no forwarding information, no way to reach them. It was as if they'd erased their old life completely, including me. "They're starting fresh," I heard Grandpa tell Mrs. Henderson from the neighboring farm. "Sometimes people think that means leaving everything behind." I pretended not to hear, but his words cut deep. Was I just part of their old life that needed to be forgotten? School started that fall, and I had to explain why I lived with my grandfather now. The other kids stared when I said my parents had moved away. Some looked sorry for me, others whispered behind my back. I learned to keep my head down and focus on my studies. Grandpa helped with homework every night at the kitchen table, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. He'd work through math problems with the patience of a saint. When I struggled with writing assignments, he'd tell me stories about the farm, about his own childhood, giving me ideas to put on paper. "You've got a good mind," he'd say, tapping my forehead gently. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The farm became my refuge. When the loneliness felt overwhelming, I'd climb to the hayloft and watch the sunset paint the fields gold. Grandpa would find me there sometimes, settling beside me without a word. We'd sit in comfortable silence, watching the world grow quiet around us. Those moments taught me that love doesn't always need words. By my second year on the farm, I'd stopped running to the window every morning. The hope hadn't died completely, but it had settled into something quieter, more manageable. Grandpa and I had found our rhythm. Mornings started before dawn with chores. I'd grown tall enough to reach the higher shelves in the feed room, strong enough to carry 2 buckets of water instead of 1. Grandpa praised my progress, and I felt proud of my calloused hands and sun-darkened skin. "You're becoming quite the farmer," he'd say, watching me guide Bessie into her stall. "Your great-grandmother would be proud. She loved this land as much as I do." He told me stories about my great-grandmother, how she'd built the vegetable garden with her own hands, how she'd canned preserves that lasted through the hardest winters. I felt connected to something bigger than myself, part of a legacy I'd never known existed. School became easier too. My teacher, Mrs. Patterson, noticed my improvement and recommended me for advanced reading groups. I devoured books about farms, about children who overcame difficult circumstances, about families that weren't traditional but were filled with love. The other kids gradually accepted my situation. Some even envied my freedom to roam the farm after school while they were stuck in suburban neighborhoods with nothing but sidewalks and strip malls. But at night, when the house grew quiet, I still wondered about my parents. Did they think about me? Did they regret leaving me behind? Did they even remember they had a daughter? Grandpa seemed to sense these moments. He'd appear with hot chocolate and stories, filling the silence with warmth. As I grew older, the questions multiplied. Why hadn't my parents fought for custody? Why hadn't they at least called to check on me? Other divorced parents shared their children, but mine had simply vanished. I wanted to ask Grandpa these questions, but something held me back. Maybe I was afraid of the answers. Maybe I was protecting him from having to explain the unexplainable. Or maybe I was protecting myself from hearing truths I wasn't ready for. Instead, I threw myself into farm life with renewed determination. I learned to drive the tractor, to repair fence posts, to recognize the signs of sick livestock. Grandpa treated me like a partner, not just a child helping with chores. "You've got natural instincts," he said, watching me calm a spooked horse. "I can't teach that kind of connection with animals." High school brought new challenges. Some classmates had started dating, going to parties, experiencing typical teenage freedoms. I felt different, older somehow, shaped by responsibilities they couldn't understand. While they complained about weekend chores, I was managing significant portions of a working farm. But I wasn't bitter. The farm had given me something precious, purpose. Every morning I woke up knowing I was needed, knowing my work mattered. The animals depended on me, and I'd never let them down the way I'd been let down. Grandpa noticed my maturity, my growing independence. Sometimes I'd catch him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, pride mixed with something that looked almost like sadness. "You're growing up too fast," he'd say softly, "but you're growing up strong." Senior year arrived with college applications and decisions about my future. My grades were excellent, and several universities offered scholarships. But leaving the farm felt impossible. This was my home, my life, my identity. "You need to see the world beyond these fields," Grandpa insisted when I expressed my reluctance to leave. "Education will give you choices I never had." "But what about the farm? What about you?" He smiled, that gentle expression I'd come to love so much. "This old place has survived worse than me being alone for a few years, and you'll always have a home here." I chose a state university 3 hours away, close enough to visit regularly but far enough to experience independence. The night before I left, Grandpa and I sat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the pasture. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, "not just for your achievements, but for who you've become. You're stronger than either of your parents ever were." But it was the first time he'd mentioned them in years. The words hung in the air between us, heavy with unspoken truths. "Do you think they ever wonder about me?" I asked. Grandpa was quiet for a long moment. "I think they lost something precious when they drove away that day. Whether they realize it or not is their burden to carry." College was challenging but rewarding. I studied agricultural business, planning to return and help modernize the farm. Every weekend I drove home to help with chores and spend time with Grandpa. Our bond only grew stronger. I was in my junior year when the phone call came. It was a Tuesday evening and I was studying for midterms when my roommate knocked on my door. "There's someone on the phone for you," she said, her voice unusually gentle. "Says it's about your grandfather." My heart stopped. I ran to the phone, my hands shaking as I lifted the receiver. "Is this Sarah Mitchell?" The voice was professional, clinical. "Yes, this is Sarah." "This is Dr. Williams from County General Hospital. Your grandfather was brought in this afternoon. He's had a heart attack." The world tilted sideways. Grandpa was strong, healthy for his age. This couldn't be happening. Is he going to be okay?" "He's stable for now, but it was significant. You should come as soon as possible." I drove through the night, my mind racing with memories and regrets. I should have been there. I should have insisted he see a doctor for his recent fatigue. I should have never left the farm. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and fear. Grandpa looked so small in that bed, connected to machines that beeped and hummed around him, but his eyes were alert when he saw me. "There's my girl," he whispered, his voice weak but warm. I took his hand, careful not to disturb the IV lines. "I'm here, Grandpa. I'm not going anywhere." "Hubby," he squeezed my fingers with surprising strength. "Good. We need to talk about some things, important things." Over the next few days, as he slowly recovered, Grandpa began sharing stories I'd never heard before. "Your parents," Grandpa began one afternoon, his voice stronger after several days of rest. "They didn't just forget about you that day. They made a choice." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "After they left, they both called me, separately. Each one assumed the other had taken you." He paused, gathering strength. "When they realized what had happened, they had to decide what to do." The machines around us seemed to beep louder as I waited for him to continue. "Your mother wanted to come back for you, but she was moving across the country for a new job. Your father was dealing with his own problems, drinking, debt, anger he couldn't control. They both thought you'd be better off with me. But they never called. They never visited." Grandpa's eyes filled with tears. "They thought a clean break would be easier for everyone, less confusing for you. They asked me not to tell you, to let you think they'd simply forgotten." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. All these years, I'd believed I was unwanted, unloved, abandoned. But the truth was more complicated, more painful in some ways. "They sent money," Grandpa continued. "Not much, but something every month. They wanted to make sure you had what you needed." "Money?" I felt anger rising in my chest. "They sent money instead of love, instead of phone calls or letters or visits. They thought they were protecting you from their mess. They were young, scared, dealing with their own pain." I stood up, pacing to the window. The farm stretched out below us, the place that had raised me when my parents couldn't. Grandpa recovered enough to come home, but the heart attack had aged him. He moved slower, tired more easily, and spent long hours sitting on the porch, staring at the fields he'd worked his entire life. "I need to update my will," he announced one morning over breakfast. "Want to make sure everything's in order." I didn't want to think about losing him, but I understood the practical necessity. We drove to town together, visiting the lawyer who'd handled our family's affairs for decades. Mr. Peterson was a kind man with wire-rimmed glasses and a gentle manner. He explained the process while Grandpa made his wishes clear. The farm, the house, everything would come to me. There were also provisions I didn't expect. "I want to leave something for my son and daughter-in-law," Grandpa said. "Not much, but something. They're still family." I was surprised but didn't object. Despite everything, they were his children. "There's one more thing," Grandpa said, pulling out a thick envelope. "Letters. I want these delivered when the will is read." Mr. Peterson nodded, making notes. "Letters to whom?" "To my son Robert, to my daughter-in-law Linda, and to my granddaughter Sarah. Things that need to be said." That evening, I asked Grandpa about the letters, but he just smiled mysteriously. "Some things are better written than spoken," he said. "You'll understand when the time comes." 2 years later, when I graduated college and returned to the farm full-time, Grandpa seemed at peace. We worked together, planning improvements, discussing the future. He was proud of my degree, excited about my ideas for sustainable farming practices. Grandpa passed away on a quiet Sunday morning in late spring. I found him in his favorite chair on the porch, looking out over the fields he'd loved his entire life. He appeared peaceful, as if he'd simply decided it was time to rest. The funeral was small, but meaningful. Neighbors came, people from town who remembered Grandpa's kindness and integrity. Mrs. Henderson spoke about his generosity during hard times. Mr. Patterson shared stories about Grandpa's wisdom and humor. I was surprised when I saw 2 familiar figures at the back of the church. My parents had come. They looked older, grayer, uncertain. We made eye contact across the crowded room, but neither approached me. They left before the service ended. The will reading was scheduled for the following week. Mr. Peterson called to confirm that my parents would be attending, along with a few other relatives I barely knew. "Your grandfather was very specific about how he wanted this handled," Mr. Peterson explained. "He wanted everyone present when the letters are read." I spent that week in a strange, emotional limbo. Grief over losing Grandpa mixed with anxiety about seeing my parents again. What would they say? What would I say? How do you bridge 20 years of silence? The farm felt empty without Grandpa's presence, but I found comfort in the routines he'd taught me. The animals still needed care, the work still needed doing. Life continued, as it always does. On the morning of the will reading, I dressed carefully, in the black dress I'd worn to the funeral. I wanted to look professional, adult, capable. I wanted my parents to see what I'd become despite their absence. The lawyer's office felt cramped with all of us there. My parents sat across the room from me, stealing glances but not speaking. The tension was thick enough to cut. Mr. Peterson began with the formal reading of the will. As expected, I inherited the farm, the house, and most of Grandpa's assets. My parents received small monetary bequests, enough to acknowledge their relationship, but not enough to suggest forgiveness. "Now, Mr. Peterson said, adjusting his glasses, "Your grandfather left specific letters to be read aloud. He wanted everyone to hear these words together." He opened the first envelope. "This letter is addressed to Robert and Linda Mitchell." My father shifted uncomfortably as Mr. Peterson began to read. "To my son and daughter-in-law, you broke my heart the day you drove away from this farm. Not because you ended your marriage. That was your choice to make. You broke my heart because you abandoned your daughter, an innocent child who needed her parents' love more than she needed their perfect life. Sarah has grown into a remarkable woman despite your absence, not because of it. She's strong, kind, intelligent, and hard-working. She's everything you could have hoped for in a daughter, and you missed it all. The small inheritance I'm leaving you comes with a condition. It's not for you." It's for Sarah's future children, your grandchildren you may never meet. Perhaps someday you'll understand what you lost. The room was silent except for my mother's quiet crying. Mr. Peterson opened the second envelope. This letter is for Sarah. Mr. Peterson's voice was gentle as he read Grandpa's final words to me. My dearest Sarah, by the time you hear this, I'll be gone, but my love for you will remain in every corner of this farm. You were not abandoned, you were chosen. Chosen by me, chosen by this land, chosen by a love that runs deeper than blood. Your parents' greatest mistake was thinking that love means never causing pain. They thought leaving you behind would spare you the trauma of their broken marriage. They were wrong. Love means staying, fighting, working through the hard times together. I want you to know that you were never a burden. You were a gift. Watching you grow from a frightened little girl into the strong woman you've become has been the greatest joy of my life. You saved me as much as I saved you. This farm is yours now, but more than that, you belong to it. You understand its rhythms, its needs, its potential. You'll make it better than I ever could. As for your parents, forgiveness is a choice only you can make. But remember, they were young and scared and broken. They made terrible decisions, but they're still your family. Whether you choose to rebuild those relationships is up to you. Know that you are loved completely and unconditionally. Know that you are worthy of every good thing life has to offer. Know that I am proud to call you my granddaughter. The farm is your inheritance, but my love for you is your legacy. Carry it with you always. The silence that followed was profound. My mother was crying openly now, and my father's hands were shaking. 20 years of pain and regret filled that small room. Finally, I stood up. I looked at my parents, really looked at them, for the first time in 2 decades. Thank you for coming, I said quietly, and thank you for leaving me with him. He gave me everything I needed. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It means the world to me that you took the time to hear about my journey from abandonment to finding my true home. Please let me know in the comments where you're listening from. I love connecting with people from all over the world. And if this story touched your heart, please consider subscribing to the channel for more real-life stories like this one. Until next time, remember that sometimes the family that chooses you is stronger than the one you're born into.